Hello and welcome back to the Audible Finish, where we discuss the week gone by in the world of wrestling. I'm your host, Dimitri Kalos, and alongside me, as always, is my esteemed co-host, Thanasiu. Hello again, Thanasiu.
Salutations and peace. Isn't this amazing? We're in Royal Rumble season finally.
Finally, it's the best time of year for me, and in this week's episode, we're going to preview the entire Royal Rumble pay-per-view, including our thoughts on surprise entrants, who we think the Iron Man and Iron Woman will be, and ultimately who we think will win the matches and book their places at WrestleMania 40. We'll also review a little bit of the weekly content, but Thanasi, I think it's fair to say that the excitement really is in the Royal Rumble. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's the probably the second most exciting pay-per-view of the year after WrestleMania. So let's dig right into it.
Well, Thanasi, before we get into that, let's quickly just recap what happened on the weekly television shows. And to start off with, we're going to discuss what happened on AEW. So on Collision, Jon Moxley beat Shane Taylor, Adam Copeland beat Dante Martin, Thunder Rosa beat Queen Aminata, the Acclaimed and Bullet Club Gold united to become a supergroup called the Bang Bang Scissor Gang. Daniel Garcia beat Buddy Matthews, and afterwards there was a major brawl between the House of Black, FTR, and Garcia. Roderick Strong beat Matt Sydal, and Bryan Danielson and Claudio Castagnoli beat Eddie Kingston and Ortiz in the main event. On Dynamite, Samoa Joe opened the show basically saying competitors need to earn their shots against him, something he's been repeating for weeks now. Hangman Adam Page beat Penta. Wardlow beat Trent Beretta. Deonna Purrazzo and Tony Storm had a face-to-face segment, and this was followed by Swerve Strickland beating Jeff Hardy. Thunder Rosa beat Red Velvet. Sting and Darby Allin said they will go after the AEW World Tag Team Championships. The Acclaimed beat Mogul Embassy to retain the AEW Trios Championships, and Adam Copeland beat Minoru Suzuki in the main event, and afterwards announced that he's still gunning for Christian Cage. And then to quickly recap what happened on SmackDown and Raw from WWE. We had the contract signing for the WWE Universal Championship match, with the three babyfaces doing so at the start of the show and Roman Reigns doing so at the end. We had Legado del Fantasma beat LWO, Tyler Bate, and finally Pete Dunne, not Butch, beat Pretty Deadly. That's pretty good, Thanos.
Awesome.
We had the Kevin Owens show with Logan Paul. Then we had Katana Chance and Caden Carter defend their titles successfully against the Unholy Union. AJ Styles and LA Knight was interrupted by Solo Sikoa, and then he actually lost his match against Randy Orton in the main event. On Raw, Seth Rollins opened the show, addressed his injury, and said while he's been forecasted to be out for 3 to 4 months, he won't relinquish the title and he'll do everything he can to make it to Mania, much to Gunther's excitement as he wants to book his place at Mania in the Rumble and face the World Heavyweight Champion. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods had a double count-out match with Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci. Ivy Nile beat Valhalla. Nia Jax, Becky Lynch, and Bayley had a pre-Rumble confrontation. We'll probably get into that very soon. Dominic Mysterio beat The Miz. Ivar beat Chad Gable. And we had an enthralling segment between Cody Rhodes and CM Punk that saw CM Punk label himself more of the American dream than Cody Rhodes, and Cody Rhodes say he's more CM Punk than CM Punk himself. Very intense forehead stare down as well to close that segment, which was quite nice. We then had Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark beat Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. And then in the main event, Drew McIntyre successfully beat Damian Priest after some heavy R-Truth interference in the contest. Then I see that covers all the weekly shows. So let's finally get into what everyone has been waiting for, including us, and that is discussing the Royal Rumble preview. Then I say I'll leave it
Finally.
to you. Where do you want to start in this conversation?
Well, I think you've got a couple of talking points that you wanted to bring up, right? So I think we should, frankly, to be honest, let's go right into it and let's discuss, not predict, but let's discuss who we think the favorites are. And if I may be so bold as to name the first favorite that I would like to put out there, it
Please.
is one CM Punk. Now, CM Punk returned at Survivor Series. He opened up his mouth on the following Monday Night Raw, brought up the fact that he wants to be in the main event of WrestleMania. What better way to get to the main event of WrestleMania than by winning the Royal Rumble and then calling your shot on the world champion? I think that he's the number one man to go for it. And there is someone else, Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is trying to finish his story. Cody Rhodes won the Royal Rumble last year. He's trying to go back to back. I think only Hulk Hogan, or maybe Steve Austin, actually, not even Hulk Hogan. Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels are the only ones to have done it back and 2 times in a row. So
Those three names,
those
all
those are
three
the
of
three
them, they're
names.
the last
Those are the
one.
three names. So he's trying to join that extremely prestigious list. And I think I would personally say that he's slightly less likely than CM Punk by virtue of the fact that he won it last year. But also, in order to mix it up, I think he's more likely to face Roman by winning the Elimination Chamber. So he's the second favorite, I would say.
Yep.
Did you want to throw out a couple of your names, Dimitri?
Well, before I throw in some other names, the other thing I wanted to mention is Sportsbet have actually got those two wrestlers as the top two favorites as
Ah,
well. And remarkably, I think at the time I last saw it, seventh on the list was MJF.
huh.
Now, I don't think he's going to win it, but I find it amusing that a man who's not even rostered at the company is more likely than all the other guys, at least in the.
That would be massive if he showed up. There have not been any real rumors of him showing up in the WWE, but this would be huge.
Look, I think realistically he is injured, I believe. So, like even if he was jumping ship so soon, I doubt he'd actually be fit to do it.
Absolutely.
But a rumor that again doesn't feel like it's likely, but I mean people have been throwing out is someone like a Kazuchika Okada potentially making his debut, a la AJ Styles from 2016.
That is
Like,
very interesting.
what do you think about that idea?
To win or just to appear?
To look, realistically, to appear, I don't think he would win.
I think it would be awesome for it. I mean, there's no better time to do it than at the Royal Rumble. There is a lot of talk going on about where he's going to end up. So perhaps if they could figure something out behind the scenes and get him that opportunity to show up, it would be fabulous. And I'd be really, really down for it. Have I heard anything going on? Not yet. Will we hear something in the next couple of days? Potentially.
Okay, well, off the speculation train, another big name that I think is worth discussing is a guy like Drew McIntyre and his chances. I think that he's one of these wrestlers that's sort of been bubbling under the surface, but he feels like he's right there. And for all we know, he could be that person that, in one way, spoils the party, but in another way, gives us something completely unexpected. And I think that something that's worth mentioning is, for all we know, Seth Rollins might be a lot worse than what he's letting on, or that he's someone that might get the title taken away from him even before Mania, for all we know. So I think with stuff like that happening, the unexpected should become a bit more expected. Drew McIntyre is obviously a one-time winner already, like Cody Rhodes. He's potentially another person.
I definitely think that that's quite likely to happen. He was actually number three on my list, so I can't rule him out. Going through with number four, however, I'm still listing out Raw wrestlers here, just an important note to make. Gunther declared very early his intent to enter the Royal Rumble. He was the runner-up last year. He has the record for most time in the Royal Rumble match. He was the Iron Man last year. And he also had a segment with Seth Rollins on this past episode of Raw, indicating that he indeed wants to set that challenge to go for the World Heavyweight Championship, potentially like a winner takes all deal, a la Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan. We haven't seen that since WrestleMania 6. So I think he's the next one to bring up there as a real contender to win.
Absolutely. And I think that the segment this week on Raw has really, I think, lit that fire underneath a lot of fans to actually want to see that
Yeah.
encounter.
But those are my four top favorites that realistically I can see winning and it being a really big deal, not being a massive shock out of nowhere. Do you have anyone else that you want to add on the men's side?
Um, I think they are the realistic shouts. Obviously, maybe a guy like Damian Priest is a smoky. You give him the ultimate opportunity where he has the Royal Rumble opportunity for the world title and then also has the Money in the Bank in reserve. The thing that's worth noting is there really doesn't feel like a lot of SmackDown people are primed and ready
No,
for a
not at
Royal
all.
Rumble win here. But
Um,
to me, that doesn't say the winner won't necessarily challenge Roman Reigns.
that's a good point to bring up. That is a good point to bring up. I still think whoever wins it will challenge Seth Rollins, but you are right that the winner does get the selection. On your point about SmackDown being light, the reason SmackDown is light is because obviously its world champion is not going to wrestle in the Royal Rumble. That's one name. Then you've got three number one contenders that are actually in a match at the Royal Rumble. So you take them slightly away. It doesn't mean that they can't compete after their contest, but it does make things a little bit awkward. But that being said, LA Knight, before becoming number one contender, I would have thought that he'd be a great shout to really, really challenge deeply in the Royal Rumble. Maybe not to win, but to have a really prominent performance in there. And the other name that I want to throw out as well is Kevin Owens, who is a main event caliber wrestler. He's also scheduled to be in a match. So I think that rounds out most of my main event talent who are not going to be competing in the Royal Rumble from SmackDown, which therefore leaves all the big options from Raw. What are you thinking on this split? If you have any thoughts, that is.
No overwhelming thoughts, but I guess it do you notice that Rumbles tend to go like this when there are two different champions on different brands? It feels like one year it's very heavy on one particular brand where they need to crown that contender, and then on the other feels like it's not quite the direction required. So I think this kind of has that same vibe of it just feels like this year it's Raw's chance to win.
That's a fair enough analysis. I don't mind that logic to it. That being said, if I can just add on one extra name from SmackDown, and this might be a good segue for us to talk about the surprises, because I know you mentioned Okada and MJF, but a surprise return, potentially Rey Mysterio to come back from injury in the Royal Rumble, set up some kind of a feud leading up to WrestleMania. I wouldn't rule that out. He also is a former Royal Rumble winner, former holder of the record for most time in the Rumble as well. So he would go in with a really good shout. And if I can also add a Raw surprise, Brock Lesnar, I think he's going to be coming back. And the most likely thing that I would expect from him would actually be to set up some kind of a confrontation with Gunter,
Mm.
because that has been the speculation that they're going to face off at WrestleMania. And with this massive shock to eliminate like a massive favorite from the Royal Rumble might be a really good angle for him. What do you reckon?
I that's definitely one of the predictions I'm expecting. It's the attitude, especially now that Gunter's announced his intentions for the World Heavyweight Championship. You need to give him a distraction if he doesn't actually win it, so that he doesn't just go, "Oh, well, I want it." Now it's like have Brock eliminate him and Gunter's pride be hit, and him want to reclaim it and to conquer the beast. So yeah, I think that would be an excellent use of the surprise, and I think it would be because of last year's Rumble where Brock didn't eliminate Gunter. It wouldn't feel this time around that it's like one of the older part-timers bearing the consistent talent. It feels a bit more like it's just a setup. I don't think fans would necessarily hate on it either.
No, that's right. I think that would get quite hot for it. Likewise, I think the fans would get quite hot for the anticipated, perhaps not expected, but hotly desired return of Sami Zayn. He was one of my predictions, I think, if you recall, in our 2024 predictions of becoming a world champion. This might be one way for him to really, really stake his claim by having a deep run and a shock return at the Royal Rumble, potentially a Final Four appearance. Who knows? Um, but I think that that would be really big, potentially to set up a feud. I don't know with whom, but to set up a WrestleMania feud as well to give him that big singles match.
Well, speaking of the hotly desired returns, I think that a big surprise that would get a lot of people off their seats is the return of one Andrade Cien Almas.
Hmm, that's a
I
very good shout.
I really do think it's going to happen. With the way they've been talking about the reports, we obviously know Andrade is Triple H's boy. We know he's Charlotte's boy. So I think that there's a lot to this. And the Rumble just feels like it's a natural place to have these sorts of moments and put him back into the thick of things.
That is actually a really, really good shout. I would love to see that happening. I would really, really enjoy that. There's actually there's a lot of talent that I can see entering this match that might not necessarily be that top tier potential winners, but they're at the main event level caliber that we want to see them having like that strong appearance. Andrade is one of them. I think there's someone else that I want to see having a good run, and that's Jey Uso.
Mm,
Jey
yeah.
Uso's really cementing his main event status, and I think this is going to be the hotly anticipated confrontation with his twin Jimmy that is going to set up their WrestleMania singles match. Do you agree?
Well, it's an interesting point you raised because another question I had as a prompt for this discussion is what feuds will be set up. And I truly believe that's going to happen. I think Jay's going to come in, Jimmy's going to come in, and Jimmy's going to get this one over his brother, his twin brother. And it's going to set up that match that the fans probably want more than the brothers do themselves. I've heard this many times that sometimes tag team wrestlers, they're not that keen about having to face each other in the singles combat. But I think that in this case, it needs to happen just from every sense of the word to really build up WrestleMania 40 as this huge crescendo of the bloodline.
You are right. However, that being the case, that's because most tag team partners are not siblings. Every pair of siblings, whether they're in a tag team or not, they want to have a singles contest together at WrestleMania. Owen and Brett did it. Jeff and Matt did it. They really wanted it. And I'm certain 100% that Jimmy and Jey Uso want this. They're relishing it. And hopefully they're going to give us a banger at WrestleMania. But before we get there, a really nice setup at the Royal Rumble. To answer your question, I think we've also said, Gunther and Brock Lesnar.
We have.
That's one, right? I think another one that is going to be wrapping up like a loose end or just kind of like a tease is Cody Rhodes and Nakamura. I think that was an easy one to kind of relive that rivalry briefly. They don't even have to eliminate one another, but as long as they have, like a little confrontation in the center of the ring, I think that that's quite likely to occur. But that's just me.
I think building on your Rey Mysterio surprise, that I think this is going to lead to Rey Mysterio Santos Escobar being built up to Mania.
Oh, okay. Right.
That's what I think the building towards. Give Ray another chance to go up against a fellow Mexican wrestler on the grandest stage of them all.
Well,
And
go on, yeah.
and I think that that's what they're going to tease at the Rumble is potentially have Santos eliminate Ray and really get that one over him.
On the subject of lucha libre, what about a returning Andrade going head to head with Dominic Mysterio? And you could put Andrade on the SmackDown brand and just promote it as an interpromotional match. I think that would be one way to go about it. Or even against Damian Priest, he's Hispanic. Keep it still with a lucha vibe. But there's a lot of options there.
I think with Andrade that there are so many wrestlers that he could just have that spark with, like even have him just step up and stare down Drew McIntyre, rekindle the NXT rivalry they had.
That would be fabulous. Because I was actually going to say Drew McIntyre potentially with Sami Zayn, but that one has a really great story to it. And with Triple H at the helm, we can't rule that out because that would be a great shout. Well done.
Yeah, no, but this is the beauty of the Rumble when it's done right, is that you can just put that, you can light that spark for so many different ideas. So
Before
yeah,
we move on to your final talking point, I'll just throw out Bobby Lashley and Karrion Kross. They can have
Oh, yeah,
potentially their first confrontation. It can be low impact, low risk. So I think that's one to just kind of throw out there as another possibility.
for sure. All right, well, it's interesting to say Bobby because he's probably someone people would rate for this next prompt that I have, and that is who's going to get the most eliminations. And it's hard to predict ahead of time, really, what something like this would happen. But you always gravitate towards the heavyweights, guys like Gunter, guys like maybe Bobby Lashley's a smoky. Brock Lesnar, if he does appear, is always good for some eliminations. Is there any name that really just comes out to you?
Aside from the ones that you've said, I would probably say Drew McIntyre as well, because that can really build up his story, especially if he walks out on Monday Night Raw saying, I had the most eliminations and then got screwed by whoever it is that might eliminate him. There's a lot of ammunition there that he can use. So I think he's the one that I think is most likely, to be quite honest.
What about as a smoky, a guy like Cody or Punk? Say that they managed to get five, six eliminations, and that's just enough to put them ahead.
Well, generally, look, whoever is the winner means that they're lasting until the end. So, by virtue of like their finishing position, typically, yes, they would. And given that they're the two favorites, they are good shouts for it. But I think that in the past, it hasn't always aligned quite like that. So, I think one of the heavyweights is a slightly safer bet.
The other thing that I think a lot of fans always speculate about or always want to see is who's going to be the Iron Man of the match. And I truly think that in polar opposite to last year, this year it's going to be Cody Rhodes. I think he's going to come out number one.
I can see that happening, to be honest. Even if he comes out at number two, he would still start the match and get to the end. I can see that being quite likely. I can also see the same thing for Drew McIntyre for the same logic as him coming out on Monday Night Raw saying, I have the most eliminations. He can come out and say, I have the most minutes and got screwed. I also think someone like a Jey Uso really getting the crowd behind him, hot, believing, and then putting all the heat on Jimmy. Those are probably some of the biggest ones that I would put out there. Probably not someone like a CM Punk just for the stamina, because he was 10 years ago, he was the Iron Man, but just not this time around, I wouldn't say.
And I'd also say that with Punk, people are going to pop when he does appear. So you might as well hold out and you get to a number 20 and you're like, oh, maybe this will be Punk's spot.
Yeah.
And it's like the double wham of, oh, like say you put it under there in the match. People won't even be just thinking about what's the surprise going to be if they've got Punk lingering and be like, okay, when's he going to come out? Because that's sort of happened last year with Cody Rhodes. We all knew he was in it.
Yeah.
So we're kind of waiting for his music to hit so that when there were these other people coming in, it was a surprise. It didn't always it wasn't predictable. It wasn't just something that we were anticipating.
Yeah.
All right, well, on that note, we've discussed eliminations most, discussed Iron Man, we've discussed favorites, we've discussed a lot. Who makes it to the final four? What's your predicted final four?
I'm going to give you my predicted final four. I think that because the two most likely victors are going to be CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, and they had a big confrontation as well, that they will constitute two of the four. I also think that I can see one SmackDown wrestler being in there. And I think, to be honest, that it's going to be a recently pinned or just recently lost LA Knight. I think that he would be there as like a late surprise, say like a between 25 and a 30. But you also need a heel in there because all three of those are essentially baby faces. And I think that it's going to be Drew McIntyre in there getting booed, probably wrestling it strongly as a heel, maybe getting eliminated by LA Knight just to make sure that we don't have that like a double turn or anything. But yeah, that's the way that I see it going, to be honest. I think those are going to be my four. Who do you reckon?
So I've got Punk and Cody in.
Mm-hmm.
I've also got Drew in. The fourth name is one where I fluctuate, but I genuinely think it's going to be Damian Priest.
Okay.
I think they're going to give him a long shot in this just because let's be real, Priest is someone that still needs to be built up somewhat. Still needs to be somewhat protected from from losses and bad performances. Now that he is the Money in the Bank holder and he is logically one of the upcoming world champions that WWE is going to produce. So I think they're going to give him that. And plus, I think the beauty of that is Drew is sort of in a tweener phase right now.
Mm-hmm.
Fans still like him. There's also obviously still beef against Cody and Punk. He probably would be booed, but with Damian, it's a guarantee. Like fans are ready
Yeah.
to boo him
Yep.
compared to the rest. So just put that one guaranteed heel, that one sort of in between. With Punk, you've got that kind of he's a face, but he still treats himself seriously, and Cody's just the outright Cena type, you know?
Yep.
So
I
it's
can
like
take
almost
that.
like you covered the whole spectrum of where people lie between
Yep.
good and bad. I think that's my final four. Before we make any sort of bold predictions on the Rumble, let's discuss a bit the women's side as well, because I know you have plenty of thoughts
Yes,
on that Rumble as well.
I do. Maybe we should follow through your prompts exactly because they were a good way to structure our conversation. So let's go with prompt number one. What is it?
Okay, well, who are the favorites?
The favorites. Well, I don't think there are quite as many here as there are on the men's side. In fact, I would only list two real juggernauts that are there who are likely to win. On Raw, I think it's Becky Lynch. I think her confrontation with Rhea Ripley and her backstage interactions with Rhea as well indicate that they will be going head to head at WrestleMania, perhaps using the Rumble as a way to have that as a vehicle to getting there.
Hmm.
And on the other side, the story that really makes sense, the one that I hope is going to be this way, is Bayley to go head to head with Io Sky. I've said before that I think that they can have like a Batista style blow off where it's like Bayley's going to be choosing which one am I going to go with. The faction wants her to go to the other brand, and then they have dominance. But those are the two that I really think are likely to be winners. Do you have any other names to shout out?
I'm gonna add in a third name because I believe those two as well are the strong favorites. I also think that there is the possibility of it being a Nia Jax. I think that look, obviously she's no one's favorite wrestler, and as we all know, she's not like most girls. And in this case, I think that for the first time in her career, she actually does feel like the biggest heel in the division, especially compared to a person like Rhea Ripley, who she's a heel, obviously, but she feels more like she's just the division's mummy. She just is the top dog. It's not
And
a
she's a fan favorite heel.
yeah,
We love booing her.
yeah. And some men just love her and like being dominated by her, I assume, in Dominic and potentially Buddy Matthews.
Oh yes.
Yeah. But not to get too sidetracked, I think that with Nia Jax that there is that chance, especially since Becky Lynch has won once before,
Mm-hmm.
and the women's Rumble's been going on for since 2018, so maybe they're not quite ready to have a repeat winner just yet. Bailey, it's a bit more to me that makes more sense, and I just like to see, especially if the men's going to be won by a Raw star, as we think it will be, it'd be nice to make the women's match be won by a SmackDown star.
That's what I was thinking as well. I just thought it would have some good symmetry there.
Yeah. Okay, well, on that, let's move on to what we think are going to be surprises in the women's side. And to be honest, with the women, at this point, my first shout isn't exactly a surprise, but I'm just going to say Michelle McCool because she seems to
Oh,
appear
okay.
every single time. So I think makes sense. But there are plenty of options because they tend to have to fill out their matches with more stars. So what
Look,
do you think?
for me, I've got a few listed out here.
Yeah.
All of them are currently signed, however, so they're not super shock or like guest appearance. They're all
Okay.
currently signed.
Yeah.
I think we could have a returning Liv Morgan.
Okay. Yeah.
She was facing some kind of arrest allegations for
For
carrying
weed.
drugs. So I think she could be one return, not to win, but just to make a surprise appearance. Likewise, Raquel Rodriguez returning from injury. She was former number one contender. She has held women's gold in NXT, so I think she could be one way to go.
Yeah.
Charlotte as well, potentially. If Andrade is going to return, maybe she can do the same thing and have that reflection of her man as well, her man Manny. And finally, Trish Stratus.
Oh,
For some reason, she is still listed in Wikipedia as part of currently signed WWE personnel. Even if it's a guest appearance as like a one-off potential, I wouldn't want to see it, to be honest, because I thought that she was actually going to retire like off into the sunset after that one last heel run. But maybe this is going to be a last return to go up on top as a baby face. So those are my names. That's just a handful of them there.
well, I've got another name. Likewise, as what you're saying, it's not, she's contracted with the company, so it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility. And that is an NXT star in Roxanne Perez.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
think that
yeah.
they could go for that. They tend to like to give a couple NXT call ups just as moments to have in it, and I think for her it feels like it would be a nice
Yeah,
moment. I think
I can see that happening. Even Tiffany Stratton as well,
Tiffany Stratton.
who's held the NXT title. So yeah, definitely some NXT appearances is very very likely.
I'm trying to say a name that actually isn't at the company, at least right now. And I don't know exactly what's going on with her, but maybe a smoky shout is a Naomi, or as we know on the Independence Trinity,
Trinity
Fatu.
Fatu, yes, that would be good. I mean, I think she was recently wrapping up with TNA or with Impact, so I actually thought that might be a good shout of yours. And who else we can't deny? Mercedes Monet,
Yeah.
formerly Sasha Banks. She could do it. She would be met with an enormous pop. The only thing I think I could compare her to would be like an MJF and possibly bigger because she'd already be familiar with the WWE audience.
And I'd say this as well is that we talk about favorites in Becky Lynch, Bailey, and me saying Nia Jax. Sasha Banks is one of the legitimate surprises that could win and feel right.
Absolutely.
So I think
Absolutely.
there's a lot to be said about that potential surprise. Well,
Yeah.
I to be fair, I don't think we can think of a better surprise. So let's move on to my next prompt, which is what are the feuds we think that are coming out of the Rumble? And I think the first one that's quite obvious is Bailey if she wins. Perhaps if there's interference, Bailey, the breakdown of damage control.
Yep.
I think that that's definitely an item that feels like it feels like that group, at least with Bailey in charge, is heading to an end. I think as well that we're going to see an escalation of Becky Lynch and Nia Jax, because my prediction for Mania is actually going to be a triple threat against Rhea Ripley with those two involved.
That's interesting. I was actually expecting singles, but that's an interesting shout. Um, or to add on to multi-person matches, what about a tag feud between Asuka and but essentially actually both Kabuki Warriors and the Unholy Union, perhaps set up their rematch or potentially even set up like a four-way tag for WrestleMania.
Yeah,
That would be for the women's tag titles. What do you think there?
I think that's a very good shout. It's actually something that I've been thinking about for the last couple of weeks that they're going to do again because they did it last year.
They did
And I
it
think,
last year.
like how WrestleMania is, sometimes they find traditions that they quite like and they keep hold of it. I think this potentially could be another one that they hold on to.
Yeah. What else have we got?
Well, if Trish Stratus does appear, it could lead to a Mania moment against Zoe Stark.
Zoe Stark, yes, that could be one way to go. I don't know if Zoe Stark is quite on the level yet to get maybe maybe a moment, a confrontation or something, perhaps not a match. But I think Trish Stratus against someone like a Bianca Belair, she could have a good mid-card marquee match as well, just in the middle of the WrestleMania card in singles.
I'd be I'd like to see it, but I'd be curious to see if Trish would again play the heel.
Mm.
Because that's the thing I'd find very interesting. I would love to see Bianca Belair involved in just a grudge match.
Oh yeah, and she's at the caliber that you can do it, and there's
Mm,
certainly enough women's talent to accommodate for it, especially with 2 days.
yeah. Actually, building on that point, say Charlotte appears. What if they had another encounter between Charlotte and Trish Stratus?
They could do that. I don't know if I would be the biggest fan because we have seen it already. I would rather see Trish Stratus being in a fresh contest, someone that she hasn't wrestled before. But I wouldn't rule out WWE scheduling something like that.
You never know. Sometimes just on a bigger platform becomes a bit more engaging or arousing to the heads that be.
Indeed.
All right. Well, on that note, who do we think the Iron Woman's going to be for this match? I think it's actually quite a clear answer for me, at least.
Who are you going with?
I think it's going to be Becky.
Yeah,
I think that she's going to say, "I want to start it," and she'll be there for the majority of the match. And when I say start, maybe not one, but certainly like the first 4 or 5 entrants, I'd say.
but frankly, I'm going to have to agree with you on this one because I can't think of anyone else aside from her. I guess one wild card to throw out would be someone like a Chelsea Green. Maybe she throws like a Karen rant about being so early on, and then she finds a way to get Piper Niven to do the dirty work after a few minutes or a few entries, and then she kind of hangs out on the outside, only to return in the final four or something like that. So that's the only other name I would throw out. But yeah, Becky Lynch is definitely the favorite for that.
Okay, well, the next one that we've got is most eliminations. And again, to me, this is quite simple. I think it says something about the fact that this Royal Rumble for the women's side feels like there are a few options, or at least that there are very few people that to hone in on. And for most eliminations, I think very clearly build her up as a monster, Nia Jax.
Could not agree more. That was exactly who I was going to say as well. Nia Jax is going to have it.
And it's something that she's legitimately the biggest monster in the women's division. Sometimes with a match like this, it does pay to let them show that side. Well, we've got a lot going on with this Royal Rumble as well. Obviously, it's not as unpredictable as what's going on with the men, but I think getting a final four might actually prove harder to predict, given that there are fewer options to win the thing. So, on that note, who do you think is going to be the final four?
Well, we've all made some really good points. I'm going to throw in Chelsea Green just after that little on the fly improvisation that I did. I think she's going to be from Raw. I think Bailey's going to be in there because I think Bailey's likely to be winning. I also think that someone along with her from Damage Control, maybe like an Asuka, would make sense to kind of say, we're teaming up, we're helping each other. And I'll also throw in, just for shits, let's throw in Nia Jax as well. If she's going to have the most eliminations, maybe Becky can be that come in at fifth to set up that final four with her eliminating Nia Jax. But yeah, and then maybe, the other three teaming up to eliminate Nia or something like that.
So you don't have Becky Lynch in your final four.
No, no, I don't.
Well, okay. Well, I guess that probably says we'll get into predictions later, but off that, I think I can wager what you're thinking.
That's right.
Uh, for me, I have Nia Jax because I think she's going to come in late.
Yep.
I have Becky Lynch, not exactly original, but I do think that she'll do a good job.
Yep.
I have Bailey as well, so I've got the three favorites there, or at least the people I consider favorites there, and
Yep.
I've also got as a smoky shout Kyrie Sane.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think the you can tease the history there, and I can foresee a moment in which Bailey chooses or elects to eliminate Kairi Sane and have it be this really dramatic moment where
Ah.
she said, no ill will, but as we know, she was the last person to attack Kairi Sane before she left the company in the first place. So I think
Okay.
this could be at that moment of really sowing the seeds of dissension between Bailey and Damage Control and officially getting that breakdown.
Very nice.
Well, Thanasi, we've discussed a lot about the Rumble. I'm very excited about it. It's obviously a favorite time of the year. But let's now make our official predictions for the 2024 Royal Rumble pay-per-view. And to start off with, we've talked about the Royal Rumble matches already on the main show. So let's start off with the opening contest for what we're going to say is the four-way for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship, and that is Roman Reigns versus Randy Orton versus AJ Styles versus LA Knight. Yeah, where are you going here?
Look, I think there is only one way to go here. Three very good number one contenders, three very, very hot number one contenders. But how can you ever go past Roman Reigns? He is the undisputed champion. We're going to be seeing him defending at WrestleMania. I don't see him dropping it. Hopefully not against The Rock, but nevertheless, I don't see any of these other three taking the strap off of him. I'm going with Roman Reigns.
Yes. If I've learned anything over these last 3 years is you don't bet against the tribal chief. And when we're only a couple months away from WrestleMania, you certainly don't bet against the tribal chief. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Roman's gonna win this. And we've been saying it in previous weeks, but I like that because it's a fatal four-way, it feels like there is a way to protect the other guys here. Unless Roman stacks them all up and does a triple pin,
Oh
which
God, I hope not.
he won't do it. To be honest, I think Randy and LA Knight on their own are just too big to then add a third person to do a stacked pin.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Roman will win. He'll get by the skin of his teeth, and he's gonna, depending on who wins the Rumble or who sets up their match against him at Mania, they're gonna build up this thing of the clock is ticking.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, from one heel champion to another, we've got Logan Paul defending the United States Championship against Kevin Owens. This is a very weird match for me, to be honest, in terms of what to predict, because on the one hand, you think maybe a guy like Logan Paul will hold on to it until Mania. But on the other hand, you think maybe give it to the more experienced champion, like the more experienced star to be champion going into Mania and hold that title. So for me, I find this a really awkward match to predict because I can definitely actually see it going either way. For you, though, where are you leaning?
Oh, I'm definitely leaning more in one way than the other. Look, Kevin Owens is my favorite wrestler on this roster prior to the return of CM Punk. Those two are my top two. And as much as I would love to see Kevin Owens with gold around his waist again, I'd rather it just be world title gold because he's already held the US title three times. So I think he's in here as the first defense for Logan Paul to put on a really good US title match on North American soil. So I think he's actually going to win this one. They'll hopefully have a good match because Kevin Owens knows how to lead and Logan Paul knows how to follow. Because I think that the blow off is going to be at WrestleMania with Logan Paul putting over LA Knight. So I think he needs to hold on to the strap in order to get to WrestleMania as like a big heel, very hated, very protected and sheltered, as Kevin Owens called him on television, and then drop the title to LA Knight.
I can't fault anything that you said. I'm just purely based on the fact that I'm not convinced that Logan wants to keep going. At least, well, we can't bank on Logan Paul being available. I imagine WrestleMania is probably one of those shows that he would want to be at, but just for the sheer fact of uncertainty, I'm going for Kevin Owens, who I think is a bit the safer bet.
Okay.
And also, like, it's been a little while since Kevin Owens had singles gold, so it might be nice to see him back in that top spot. All right, well, the next match we've got is the Women's Royal Rumble. Obviously, there are 30 potential winners here, so it's a lot to predict from, and we don't even know exactly who might feature, but I think I know where you're leaning, but why you walk us through your prediction?
Well, anyone who is listening on the main show will already know that I think that the final four are going to be Bailey, Asuka, Chelsea Green, and then Nia Jax. And my guess is that of these, the only clear favorite is going to be Bailey. I think that she's going to have some kind of a confrontation with Asuka. I don't think she's actually going to eliminate Asuka. I think they're going to team up because I don't think that this is going to be the climax at the moment. I think that she's going to win purely gritty with no other opposition. And then in the lead up to WrestleMania, it's going to be teasers in Damage Control, where she's like, "Don't worry, I'm going to go against Rhea. I'm going to pick Rhea. I'm going to go against her. Just give me until after Elimination Chamber to do it." And then she's going to turn on Io Sky and challenge her at WrestleMania. And I've said it before, kind of like Batista, when Evolution was encouraging Batista in 2005 to go for the WWE title at WrestleMania 21, and then eventually he gave the thumbs down. I think something similar is going to happen for Bayley. So that's my prediction.
I really think Bailey is a strong shout. Probably my strongest shout. But the beauty of these prediction videos, Thanasi, is that I usually just go off impulse in the moment, what I'm thinking at that exact time. And in the main show, as we discuss things, the more I thought about it, the more I was speculating her performance in this match, the more I thought, crap, this might be the first time that a monster person wins the Women's Rumble, which is why I'm predicting Nia Jax.
Wow.
I I'm as surprised as you are. I didn't think I would get to this point, but I just think that one of the beauties of the Rumble is that they always sell the David versus Goliath story.
Mhm.
And sometimes Goliath needs to win to actually show how difficult that is. And I think this is going to be one of those cases where Nia Jax comes in relatively late and clears house. They will have a valiant effort from one of the last four wrestlers left to try and eliminate them potentially even on their own and really do a good job. But then eventually Nia Jax just ruins the party. And I think that it will be okay to have this end if this women's match goes before the men's. Because I think the men's is going to finish on a really high note. So the women's, you can maybe experiment a bit more.
Like a
Obviously,
heel
obviously,
going in there.
yeah, obviously Bailey would probably be a bit more of a favorite winner, same as Becky Lynch, same as maybe someone like Asuka or whatever again. But I have that weird feeling in the back of my mind that Nia Jax is actually going to pull it off. But I still think at Mania, she would challenge Rhea Ripley and potentially Becky Lynch would find a way to win the chance as well to be in
Okay.
that match. So it's a bit of a convoluted, odd prediction of mine, but I think Nia Jax is going to get the win in that match. And finally, Thanasi, it is time for the men's Royal Rumble prediction. Probably the most anticipated men's Royal Rumble in maybe 10 years. The last time in 2014, when people thought Daniel Bryan would win it and he didn't even show up. That's
Oh,
probably the last
yes.
time people were this excited about this match. So there's a lot of possibilities here, but where do you think this match is going to go? Who do you think is going to get that win and book their place for a World Championship match at WrestleMania 40?
Well, we discussed once again on the main show. I think that the four favorites that you and I have discussed would be in alphabetical order: Gunter, Punk, Gunter, McIntyre, Punk, and Rhodes. And of course, I said before, Kevin Owens is my favorite wrestler ahead of the return of CM Punk in November. And CM Punk, I believe, is going to complete his narrative, his long, long story arc, not complete his story, by winning the Royal Rumble, something he didn't do in his original run in the WWE. He won the Money in the Bank, but not the Royal Rumble. I think he's going to do it, and I think he's going to defeat Seth Rollins at WrestleMania in the main event of WrestleMania. I hope it's going to be night two, but I think they're going to put it in night one. But nevertheless, in order for him to get there, he needs to win the Royal Rumble. I don't see Cody Rhodes winning again because he did so last year, and he's got the Elimination Chamber match to get into Roman for WrestleMania in Philadelphia. McIntyre, I could see as a really good contender, but just not quite getting that victory. I think the other two are much, much bigger. And then Gunter can have a confrontation with Brock Lesnar in the Rumble, having their setup for the IC title at WrestleMania. These are the four that I see as the most likely to happen. Over to you.
Well, Thanasi, I'm predicting something that WWE has reported on that hasn't happened in 26 years, and that is a winner winning back-to-back Rumbles. Because I'm predicting the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, to win it. I think Punk is obviously the strongest shout. He has the appeal of actually being a new winner as well, which
Mhm.
for a guy that's been around for so long, that actually is quite surprising.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. But I don't know. I just think Cody's going to do it, and that he's going to have that internal drama, that internal monologue of, do I go for the weakened Seth Rollins, a person who I have history with, and try and completely uh, win comfortably, or even just steal the title away from him and finally complete my story? Or do I go for the vengeance arc? Do I go to get my payback, to go fully complete and challenge Roman Reigns again and try and win it finally and win the title that he truly wants, which is the WWE
That's
Universal
right.
title, but the WWE title.
That's the one he wants.
And I think the other thing that's guiding my opinion here is purely that I've heard that Punk has actually been announced for the Elimination Chamber show in Perth.
He
And that
has.
just makes me think that if he's going to win the Rumble, then potentially there's no need for him to wrestle on that show unless it's just a weird like mini feud match. So I have speculation that maybe he's going to be in an Elimination Chamber number one contenders match of some sort. I don't know, but I have a feeling with Cody, so I'm backing him.
Good logic all round.
We'll see how things go this weekend at the Royal Rumble.
We certainly will.
Okay, well that brings us to the end of this essentially special edition of the Audible Finish, very Royal Rumble centric edition, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
I think we should do this more often.
But
Do more pay-per-view focused shows.
perhaps we should. So we should tell them to start doing pay-per-views every 2 weeks. Save us the
Yes.
trouble. No, no. Next week we will review the aftermath of the Royal Rumble, what happened, and we'll start probably discussing things on the road to WrestleMania.
That
So
is right.
I'm very excited about it. Fantastic, great to have your company as always.
Thanks for having me. This was actually a really good episode. I had a really, really good time.
And we hope everyone else also had a good time along with us. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, we hope everything you do is just too sweet.